there's a number of businesses out there that have some tools that will enable you or facilitate you in your growth. Take advantage of them, because I can tell you from the corporate side, they're looking for you. It's just a matter of where you are and if they can find you. What I currently do in my job is I run an organization called Canadian Aboriginal Minority Supplier Council. You never have to remember that name, you just have to remember CAMSC. But primarily what I do is I'm a matchmaker. I match up Aboriginal minority businesses to corporate Canada. So I make sure the introduction, the connection is made, so when you have a strong value proposition, you have a strong product or service, I get you in front of the right people, and then the opportunity there is for you to actually sell what you do or what you make. My business goes out and we look for those corporations who want to diversify their supply chain. When I say the supply chain, where they buy products and services, they want people who look like you and I in some of those areas. Now, guess what? I do not have Aboriginal or minority people who actually have steel who can sell to companies. So it might be very distinct as to what the product or service is, but they're looking for that. So therefore, we started 9 years ago. We currently have about 65 corporations who do business with my organization saying, Cassandra, can you help us find people who can supply this? Because if RBC says, can you do printing services for me across the Maritimes? You say, no, but I can do it in Truro. They said, no, can you go beyond Truro? So they're looking for you to expand your border. So I'm looking for companies who want to grow, who want to get bigger. So in CAMSC, my organization, we have two particular groups. We have the corporate members, so that's my Target, that's my Walmart, that's my RBC, Scotiabank, all these guys over here. And then I have suppliers. That's what any of you here who run a business would be. And I match the two up. One of the key things I'm looking for is I'm looking for businesses that are owned, managed, and controlled. Owned, managed, and controlled by either Aboriginal or minority. The whole intent of that is because I'm looking to put wealth back into the hands of people who look like you and I. I'm not looking for a front company, someone who hires me to be their salesperson, but it's a mainstream company. I want this company to be owned, managed, and controlled by Aboriginal or minorities, because there's a greater likelihood that if you own, manage, and control, you will hire people like me, and the community as such will grow, the wealth will grow in the community. So we talk about what is your value proposition, what do you bring to the table? This is not the type of matchmaking where just because you're a supplier, they say, oh, we want to do business with you. You have to bring something to the table that they're interested in that meets what they're looking for. So they're very interested. They will give you a list of, over the next 2 years, we could be looking for this and this and this. That gives you opportunity to say, if I don't have it, who can I work with that I can bring that to the table? So, well, when I talk to people, some of my suppliers, it's an education process, because some of them you've come today and you've come yesterday, you're trading cards, and you'd love to go away thinking, I can make a deal today or tomorrow. That would be wonderful, but that's not the way the real world we operate in works. What it takes is that you to establish a relationship with the organization, you to put your value proposition in front of them, and all of these tend to be longer-term contracts. So if I'm RBC, they might have just outsourced their printing services for a 3-year window. That does not come up again until the next 3 years. But what's important is that they know who you are, they continue to talk to you, then 2 years down the road when they're putting their RFP out, they contact you and said, are you still doing that? Would you be interested? And you actually then get an opportunity to bid on the contract. And then they would lock you in for a 3-year window. So that's the way the business grows. It's all about building the relationship, having the value proposition, and making sure on a regular basis you're in front of this organization. Now, in CAMSC, one of the very distinguishing things we have done is we have said we certify suppliers. That's probably a phrase most of you have never heard of before. What that means is we certify that you're owned, managed, and controlled. There's a very rigorous process we go through to make sure it's owned, managed, and controlled. We actually ask people for their financial statements. If you're incorporated, we ask you for your share structure, we ask you for your bylaws. A number of businesses who are incorporated, might have done this 5-10 years ago, they say, I'm not sure where that's at. What are you asking for again? This is a step towards, if you're doing business with larger organizations, they'll want to know this, so this gets you ready. This gets you in the door, you start to pull this information together. So we take you through a rigorous online application process, and then guess what? We actually come out and we visit your premises. I want to know that what you told me you do, you actually do. Because if I'm going to tell Walmart you manufacture something, and Walmart actually contacts you and you say, oh, I'm just getting ready to buy the products or buy the machines, I don't want to put you in a bad light, and it's going to discredit anybody I bring to the table again. So this site visit that I do is really about validating what you say you do, you do. So when I stand up in front of my corporate members, I can tell them, yes, this is what they bring to the table, this is their marketing profile, this is who they are. Now, one thing that I've noticed very in particular when I think about the Aboriginal community, there's a lot of joint ventures that go on. And we heard today that you could build a lot of capacity in doing joint ventures because you get the influx of money, influx of resources. But you've also heard me say 51% owned, managed, and controlled. So if you're looking for any sort of joint venture, make sure it's on the side that you own the majority of that, because that's what's important. And what we're now doing, as we find them, as you register in the database, as you become certified, we're asking companies to now start reporting on how much business they are doing with certified suppliers. We are not mandated to do this, and as I say to many people, especially with my American friends, Canadians are really nice people. You know, we're really, really nice. We don't want to ask anybody or push anybody too far. And so even this supplier diversity that I'm talking about, this whole inclusiveness about, getting more in your supply chain, the Americans say this must be done, and they will tell people to do this. Canadians are like, oh, we just want it to happen. We don't want to force anybody to do anything. And so as a result of that, we are really going out selling the business case for why this is important to be done in Canada. And in doing so, we also ask them to start collecting the data around how many bids they put out to people who look like you and I. How many awards are given to people who look like you and I. Over the past 3 years, because we are very focused on how we ask them and what we're looking for, we have seen the spend with diverse suppliers grow from 70 million in 2010 to 142 million in 2011 to 300 million in 2012. And we're just collecting the 2013 data now. What does that say? That says, one, companies actually realize the value of what you bring to the table. They are interested, they're looking for that. They wouldn't spend money if it didn't mean something to them. It also means they are now collecting the data. It's important for them to be able to report to people what they're doing. If you ever heard the term corporate social responsibility, that's a huge issue these days. Supplier diversity that I'm talking about comes right under corporate social responsibility. So when they're reporting their numbers, they want to talk about what their supplier diversity looks like. This is vitally important. And in doing so, they want to talk about how it's done with certified suppliers. So you can see that we're seeing a growth in Canada. My head office is principally in the Ontario region. And so because there's a lot of corporate offices sitting in Ontario, but we have branched out across Canada, so we have companies that span from end to end and that are now looking to do business, whether it's in Nova Scotia, whether it's in Quebec, whether it's in Manitoba, whether it's in BC. And so therefore, I'm looking for suppliers in each of these areas to bring something to the table that when a bank in Nova Scotia says, do you have anybody who does flooring services here? We'd have a list that we can put in front of them. That's what's important. Now, when corporates come to the table, there's some who know what they're doing. There's others who come to my organization and said, where do we start? How do we find these guys? What's the next step for us? So we take them through a process of, one, identifying who they currently have in their supply base currently, right? They typically don't know who they really buy from and whether they're owned by Aboriginals or whether they're owned by minorities. There's a myth out there that I can't ask the question. That's just wrong. Guess what? Any company can ask if you're owned by a minority or you're owned by an Aboriginal, as long as it's linked to a program, as long as it's linked to a policy as to what we're going to do with that data, and the next steps is we actually have a program in place how we're going to use it. If they're just asking to ask, then that's wrong, because we don't know what they're doing with that. But if it's linked to a program, and you can always tell on site that we'll have either a supplier diversity policy, they'll talk about their program, you see what it's linked to. When they ask that, that's to start collecting the data so they know from where they come. Those goals tend to be, how do I outreach to that community to identify suppliers who meet my need? And so that's where it's important that if I know who's out there, if you're in my database, I can actually put you in front of these guys. So on the other side, so that's how the corporates start to use it. They basemark, then they start to do sort of analysis of where they buy, and then start to identify, are there particular strategic areas that we should start to buy in that would mean we'd have some level of success because they're suppliers, diverse suppliers who can present to us in that area. They start to build on that. On the supplier side, I have suppliers who sign up on my business, because there is a cost, but it's a really minor cost in the scheme of doing things. They sign up, and they then think that the phone's going to ring. Okay, I don't know about you, but I've been in business a long time. My phone doesn't ring unless it's my mother calling me. Businesses just don't call because I've signed up. So then one of my guys, Philip, will take them through, okay, let me take you through the ABCs. Now that you're certified, this is what you need to do to grow your business. We have a series of events that you have to start being seen, making the right connections, identifying where your product or service aligns with who's in the room, and start to build that relationship. Also on our database, we have the list of all their supplier diversity managers that are the shortcut to getting to the procurement officers, which is really where you want to be. But you got to get there because these guys will be your advocate inside. So you got to set up, who am I going to call? Who makes sense? How do I build that relationship? I go to all the events. Because we're linked so tightly with the Americans, you can go to not just the Canadian, but the American events. Where do they do business? You start to build on that. And then, as I said, this is not for the faint of heart, and this is not for someone who wants to be in and out in 6 months or a year. You've built a relationship, you're in a constant contact, then things start to happen. You might get invited to bid on something small. You might not get that, but you heard today what you're looking for. If you don't get it, what's the feedback? What did I or did I not do that didn't meet what you're looking for? What can I do better? And you build upon that. So there's an onus, whether you're a corporate member or whether you're a supplier, as to what you have to do to get yourself in the game and to grow. I can actually tell you, in our database, we have about 400 certified suppliers. These are 400 suppliers across Canada in various industries who bring real value to the table. I took a group of people to Calgary. We went to the supplier chain forum out there, and we actually brought an Aboriginal staffing company called Spirit Staffing with us. And so they have very recently signed a contract with United Rentals to supply a contingent staffing service in the oil patch. And as well, United said, oh, what can you do for us in the Calgary area as well? So now they've expanded that, not just in northern Alberta, now in the Calgary area. TELUS came with us as well. TELUS said, I didn't know you did that. Let's talk about what we can do with you across Canada. That's the type of thing that from one, it grows bigger and bigger and bigger. Let me just manage expectations. I'm not looking for you if you're just new to the game. Because you really, I want to make sure you're successful. So you got to build that if you're just new to the game. Build some level of expertise, build some database. When you're ready to grow, when you're ready to make that next step, I want to see you. That's when it's vital that you become part of my organization and we can start to showcase you. We took a team of entrepreneurs with us down to San Antonio this year to the American Conference. The American Conference probably brings about 7,000 to 8,000 businesses together. If you can imagine, you walk in a convention center, there are 7,000 to 8,000 businesses. These are all your Fortune 500 companies line the room, as well as your suppliers or your entrepreneurs walking the floor. It's phenomenal to see. But once you get over that sort of, that little bit of anxiety, if you have a good product or service, you're as good as the next one. Because guess what? The Chrysler might not buy from me, but the Chrysler will tell the person they buy from, I need you to get diversity in your supply chain. So that person they buy from might call me. And so therefore, I get in there and I get to start to do business. And I get to grow and build my capacity. So you never know at what time where I end up being a big enough guy that I could be at the GM's or the Chrysler's table. This is something that's achievable for all of us, okay? These are not people that we read about in the papers. This is achievable by all of us. But it starts with, what's your plan? You heard me say today, what is your sweet spot? Figure out what you do well, package that up, and then figure out the network that you're going to use to be able to sell that. These type of forums you're at are incredibly useful for, as I said today, the networking, but the learnings from people. What you can find out from people who are a step in front of you, as well as if there's an opportunity for you to match your service with somebody else. Because maybe you're too small, but if you pair yourself with somebody else, it becomes a viable alternative. Does it make sense? Do you have complementary services? Do you have the same value system and where you want to be and or goals and objectives? That's what you're looking at as you go through this. There's a number of resources out here, whether it's the I Do Business, whether it's CAMSC, whether it's a co-op, there's a number of businesses out there that have some tools that will enable you or facilitate you in your growth. Take advantage of them. Because I can tell you from the corporate side, they're looking for you. It's just a matter of where you are and if they can find you. And I really want you to be ready when they find you, because the opportunities are endless as to what's in front of you. The success begets success. Make no mistake about that. So I just want to leave you, we're looking for you. Please, keep focused. Figure out where you want to be, figure out your sweet spot, the opportunity is there, and there's a whole host of resources of which CAMSC is one. We want you to be successful.